Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
So let me upload the writing pad and then we will move forward. So far we have discussed about Navier-Stokes equation and its solution for certain situations in which the rectangular coordinate system will work. Now there are various situations when the rectangular coordinate system will not work, and a classical example is fully developed laminar flow through a circular pipe. This is a classical problem which in almost all undergraduate texts it is covered. We will cover it in brief, but giving a bit more insight than what is normally covered in the undergraduate curriculum. So the problem that we are considering is that you have a circular pipe like this. You may consider it as a tube or pipe, whatever, based on dimension. It has a radius r, and if you see the cross section, it is defined by any point located on the cross section. Let us imagine a point like this. It is defined as by the radial coordinate r and the polar angle theta, and the axial direction is defined by the z coordinate. So because of the natural geometry of the problem, the only change from what we have discussed so far concerning the solution of similar physical problems is that we will use the cylindrical polar coordinate system. So cylindrical polar coordinate means we will use this r theta z instead of xyz. So the way in which we will proceed is the following: that the same equations, the continuity and the Navier-Stokes equations, we will simply write in these coordinate systems. So how to write it in these systems? Of course, I mean, you can get ready-made versions of Navier-Stokes equations in this coordinate system, but another way of looking into it is we have already discussed in the class the vector form of the Navier-Stokes equation and also the continuity equation, which doesn't depend on the coordinate system that you are adopting. Therefore, it is highly possible that that vector form, it can be used for different coordinate systems. And if you see that the vector form has a very important vector operator, which is this nabla operator. In loose sense, sometimes we call it as a del operator. Now this operator has different expressions in different coordinate systems. So that different expressions for different coordinate systems makes it easy to adapt that vector form to coordinate system specific form. So the expression for this in terms of this r theta z system is there in any vector calculus textbook. So you can use that in conjunction with a vector form to arrive at this these equations, which I am going to write now. You have to keep in mind that there is nothing great in memorizing these. In fact, I am also consulting my notebook to write these equations. Not that I am writing from my head. With this online mode of teaching and evaluation, it is actually in some sense quite good in a way that whatever assessment or discussion that I am making, nowhere I am going to rely on your memory. That means what you can memorize and reproduce in a certain way. Rather, what you have understood is something what is the most important for me. So in that way, whether you can memorize these forms, of course, the XYZ coordinate, this Cartesian coordinate system equations are, if you work on those continuously, I mean, even if you do not want, it will you will inherently memorize. And for people like us who have been teaching these topics over years, I mean, perhaps in my deathbed also I can, just out of nothing, I can write those versions of the Navier-Stokes equation. But that is not any special skill. It is just if you work on something for a considerable amount of time, you get a grasp on that. So I'm just writing this, the continuity equation. So this is the continuity equation. So if you just try to understand the correspondence with the corresponding vector form, this is this divergence of rho v. Okay. So in that way, you can see that the v now has three components: Vr, v theta, and Vz. Where from all these terms come, if you see, I mean, of course, if you write this, you will get this. But even see, mathematics has a physics. If you will be good in science, if by looking into mathematical forms, just like a good sniffer dog, you will be able to smell the physics out of it. So if you see here, imagine that what is the difference between a cylindrical and say a rectangular system. So a rectangular system will have an elemental area, say if you think of xy. So you have dx dy, small x small y multiplied. If you have if you have z also, so this is the elemental volume. What is the elemental volume for this cylindrical coordinate system? So just imagine that just forget about the theta, because this term that I am going to explain doesn't depend on theta. So let us say there is no dependence on theta. So if there is no dependence on theta, that is something what you have earlier encountered. So if you have a small element dr, so that will cover annular area 2 pi r dr, and if that is multiplied by the axial thing, so this will be an elemental annular cylindrical volume. This is if there is no theta dependence. So this no theta dependence is something that I want to highlight on this term, because this term is actually not theta dependent. So in Navier-Stokes equation, all the terms, I mean, essentially you are representing per unit volume, right? In the continuity equation also, a similar spirit can be followed. So if you consider per unit volume or unit area, depending on whether it's an area dependent term or volume dependent term. Now, if you divide by this, nothing comes out in the Cartesian system. If you divide by this, you will get this 1 by r, right? If you divide all the terms by this, So that is how this 1 by r comes. In a spherical system, you will see it is 1 by r square, because in the spherical system, instead of that r, it is r square that comes into the picture. So when you express things per unit area or per unit volume, particular to a coordinate system, this is coming. So here now, here in the theta thing, so this still 1 by r coming, because the in the r theta plane, the area, the elemental area that you are considering is still proportional to r. So instead of the whole 2 pi, if you consider a small theta, so this will be changed. The 2 pi part will be changed, but that r will be there. So that will be just r d theta dr instead of this 2 pi. That is the if it is theta dependent. So in that way, even the theta dependent term 1 by r will come. But the z dependent term, in the z direction, this r d theta, all those things are not relevant. So you can see directly this comes. And when you have a 1 by r for dimensional compatibility, you should have another r here, so that this dimensionally becomes consistent with the other terms. So this is just to give you a physical idea of where from these terms come. Of course, if you put the nabla operator mathematically, you will get this. Now we will quickly move through it. First of all, we are considering steady flow. So steady flow means this will be 0. Fully developed flow means this is a function of, and we'll just assume that rho is equal to constant, not just steady, but just it is function of nothing else, just a constant. So why we will consider that is something that may become apparent if we take rho out of this derivative. So if you take rho out of this derivative, then now this term will be 0 if because for fully developed flow, the Vz is not a function of z. See, Vz could be in general a function of what? R theta z, right? So if Vz is not a function of z, then that is fully developed flow. Just like u not a function of x in a rectangular system. It is not a function of theta. Why? Because of the symmetry of the problem. See, this in the pipe, the water is entering like this and it's leaving like this. So the entry exit boundary condition, nothing is giving a bias or a relative dependence on theta, that for some theta something will happen, for another angle something else will happen. There is no bias. It is fully circularly symmetric. So that is how this theta, there is no theta dependence. So Vz could be a function of r. So in that way, this term is not relevant, and because there is no theta dependence, this is also not there. Okay, and therefore from this term we simply come up with the r derivative of r into Vr is equal to 0. That means r into Vr is not a function of r. So now we know that at small r equal to capital R, you have Vr equal to 0, right? At small r equal to capital R, that is at the wall of the pipe, the radial velocity is 0. It has nothing to do with no slip. It has something to do with no penetration. That means the fluid cannot penetrate through the wall of the pipe. So at the wall, small r equal to capital R, you have the radial velocity equal to 0. So once the radial velocity equal to 0, so you put small r equal to capital R, you have Vr equal to 0. So that means R into Vr becomes equal to 0. right? And because R into VR is not a function of R, this should be true for any other value of R, and that is possible if VR is equal to 0. Okay. Now I want to ask you something. I have considered constant density. Can this be arrived at by relaxing this condition of constant density? Right? Now I have purposefully done it by, I mean, there is a purpose of illustration. That is why I have taken this rho as constant. Now my question is that if rho is not a constant, is it possible to show from this equation that still VR will be 0 for some cases? Can one of you, tell something about this? Any one of you? Could you get my question? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So any one of you? So there is absolutely no viewpoint about it. So if you see that what is the, so just consider another way of looking into it, say incompressible flow. So incompressible flow will have divergence of velocity equal to 0. This is the kinematic constraint. So in the cylindrical system, this will be just, the rho will not be there. So, I mean, by common sense, you can write if this is divergence of rho v, then this is divergence of v, only rho is not there. So now if we put up our definition of fully developed flow, theta independence. So from here, we can conclude the same thing. R into VR not a function of R. We have earlier discussed that incompressible flow need not have density equal to constant. So this is not a must, provided it is incompressible. So you could have a variable density incompressible flow for which you can equally conclude that VR equal to 0. Now, once we have understood that VR equal to 0, so that is the outcome of this fully developed flow. Now we will write the momentum equations. That means the different components of the Navier-Stokes equation. So summarily, what we have just derived is valid for incompressible fully developed flow and steady, of course. Now, what we do, and the steadiness is important because when we look into the momentum equation, we will not consider the unsteady term, and that is why the steadiness is important. Not so much for the continuity equation, because for incompressible flow, that unsteady term anyway is not important. So in that way, for continuity equation it doesn't matter, but for other equations it will matter. So let us write the R momentum. Again, it will be a bit more lengthy than this one. The rectangular system form. Okay. So what I have done is I have faithfully, just copied this R momentum equation from the notes. I mean, just somewhere it is written. Maybe I could have made a mistake in copying some of the terms, but summarily we can find out which terms are important and which terms are not, and that will suffice. So first of all, it's a steady flow, so this term will be 0. And anyway, we started with R momentum because we know VR equal to 0. So R momentum primarily concerns VR, and because VR is 0, all the this its derivatives etc. will be 0. So we'll not look into that. All 0. And there is some theta dependence here, so that is also 0. And V theta is 0. So in a way, it will simply lead to this partial derivative of P with respect to R equal to 0. That means P is not a function of R. Similarly, theta momentum, see, you can well realize that it's the Z momentum that is the physically important because the fluid is flowing along the Z direction. So theta momentum, very similar way, all the V theta terms, I'm not writing it in an expanded form because it will unnecessarily waste time. You can see the full form in any book with this R theta coordinate based description, but it will boil down to this because you can realize very easily that the left hand side will be the acceleration which will be 0. The V theta dependent acceleration will be 0 because V theta is 0. Right hand side pressure gradient and viscous term based on V theta, because V theta is 0, that will be 0. So this in a very similar way, it shows that P is not also a function of theta. And these two are very critical because P is not a function of R, P is not a function of theta, and you are not putting up any oscillatory pressure impulse or pulse on the system. Therefore, P is not also a function of time, and in that way, this gives you an obvious conclusion that P is a function of Z only, not function of R and not function of theta, and physically also not time dependent. Now we will write the Z momentum equation, which is the most important equation for solving this problem. So this is we will write del Vz, this one, plus this is equal to okay. So now if you I mean, one of the points that maybe I can mention, but it is obvious to you by now, that the gravity effect could be incorporated by replacing P with P star, the piezometric pressure, which in the context of other coordinate system I have told, and it equally applies here. So that I am not doing anything, assuming it doesn't affect what we are talking about. So This is 0, it's a steady flow. Now Vz is not a function of r, so this is 0, fully developed flow. It is neither a function of theta because of theta symmetry. And sorry, I'm completely, sorry. Vz is a function of r, but here it is Vr equal to 0. I will just somehow in a hurry. So this is Vr into this one. So Vz is a function of r, not that it is 0. What is 0 is this one, Vr equal to 0. So that makes this term as 0. Vz is not a function of z, so this is 0. So whatever is 0, I am circling and pointing out, which makes the total term 0. So right hand side, if you see, Vz is not a function of theta. And because Vz is not a function of z, its second derivative with respect to z is also 0. So we are left with 0 is equal to, now p is a function of z only, so minus dp dz plus mu, and Vz is a function of r only, so we'll write it by ordinary derivative, 1 by r ddr of r dvz dr. Okay, so this is what we can write. So once we are writing this, what we can do is we can simply take the function of r in one side and the function of z in another side and integrate. So mu, so 1 by r ddr r dvz dr is equal to 1 by mu dp dz. Function of r only. This is function of z only. So this implies each is equal to constant. Okay, so the constant is c. So now if you integrate it, say the velocity profile, if you want to find out, so from this you can write d of r dvz dr is equal to cr dr. So if you integrate it, so r dvz dr is equal to cr square by 2 plus c1. Remember that this is the center line of the circle, I mean cylinder pipe, and so this is the z direction and this is the r direction. And because of the center line symmetry, the boundary conditions, what are the boundary conditions? At r equal to 0, you must have dvz dr equal to 0. That is, vz is maximum at the center line, and at small r equal to capital R, you have vz equal to 0. So if you put the first boundary condition, this one, so at r equal to 0, you have dvz dr equal to 0. So boundary condition 1, this will give you c1 equal to 0. Now you can again separate the variables and integrate. So you have dvz dr is equal to cr by 2. That means vz is equal to cr square by 4 plus c2. Now you can apply the boundary condition number 2, this one. So at small r equal to capital R, you have this equal to 0. So what we can say from here, is Vz is equal to C by 4 into small r square minus capital R square. Right. So this is the and C is what? C is 1 by mu dp dz. Okay. So you can relate this C with average velocity by noting that it is easier to measure the flow rate and hence the average velocity instead of measuring the pressure gradient. So what is the flow rate? Q. It is integral of this Vz into 2 pi r dr. So this is the elemental area from 0 to r. So 2 pi instead of in place of Vz we write C by 4 into r square minus r square into r dr. So 0 to r. So 2 pi C by 4. So this will be r cube. So r cube will be r4 by 4 minus r dr will be r square by 2. So it will become r4 by 2. So if you now say consider this, so this will be pi c minus pi c r4 by 8. So this is the flow rate. The minus sign should not be distracting because C is the pressure gradient, which is itself negative, or piezometric pressure gradient. Whatever, it is itself negative to drive the flow from higher head to lower head. We have discussed it earlier. Now, the average velocity, Vz average. This is simply Q by pi r square. That is, if this flow rate was uniformly distributed over the entire cross-sectional area of the pipe, what would be that? So that is minus pi C r4 by 8 by pi r square. So that becomes minus C r square by 8. So that means C is nothing but 8 Vz minus 8 Vz by r square. This is C. Vz average, minus 8 Vz average by r square. So that if you substitute here, so Vz will be now minus 8 Vz average by 4 r square into this one. So you get this parabolic velocity profile, the classical one. This is 2 into 1 minus small r square by capital R square. The velocity profile for laminar fully developed flow through circular pipe. Perhaps the most standard and classical result in engineering fluid mechanics. Now, this velocity profile is important, but from an engineering viewpoint, what is also very important is what is the pumping power that you require to drive the flow. So there is a pipe. You need to have a pumping power. Otherwise, the fluid will not flow through the pipe. The frictional losses due to viscous effects will dampen the flow, and it will not occur. So you have to supply a pressure gradient so that the fluid can overcome the viscous resistance. And when these two forces are balanced, this is what is the fully developed. So to understand that, we have to recognize that what was C? C is 1 by mu dP dz. So here P means you can also consider P star. It could include everything, pressure head and gravity head, whatever. Now, because first of all, dP dz is constant, so you can so if the pipe has a length of L and fluid is flowing from here to here, so dP star dz you can write in terms of a length unit HF. So this is basically I would simply write this first as delta P by L. So dP dz you can, or dP star dz, whatever, you can write delta P by L. Why? You can write this as delta P by L because it is a constant. So it is just a linear P versus Z. Now the delta P we have written as some H rho G, any pressure in terms of simple dimensional terms. But here that that minus HF is something which we have very carefully written. First of all, HF is positive, and what does it signify? It signifies that there is a loss of, there is a pressure drop because there is a utilization of energy to drive the flow against viscous resistance. So this we can say is a head loss due to fluid friction. So this is this is indicative of the pumping power. You can see that if you know the value of this, then that into rho into G is the pressure difference delta P, and that pressure difference times the flow rate is related to the pumping work or pumping power. So this is an indicator. HF is an indicator of how much the pumping power will be. So we replace this C is equal to 1 by mu dP dz. So C is equal to 1 by mu dP star dz. So that is minus 1 by mu HF rho G by L. This is equal to minus 8 Vz average by R square, right, from here. So from here, what we can say is HF, see 8 mu Vz L by rho G R square. We have arrived at the kind of relationship that we wanted, that is a quantitative expression for how much the pumping power will be. But as I mentioned a few times, we normally very in a standard way measure the flow rate, not really the average velocity, but they are so well related that Q is equal to pi R square into Vz average. So instead of Vz average, we will just write Q by pi R square. So R square into R square will become R to the power 4. And in engineering, we commonly use the diameter of the pipe as an index and not radius. It's just the way in which engineering is done. So if you go to any industry, they will say what is the diameter of the pipe. They will not normally talk about the radius of the pipe, but it is so obvious that diameter is equal to 2 radius. So HF instead of R, if you write D by 2, so it will be 2 to the power 4, that is 16 into 8. It will become 128 mu QL by rho G pi d to the power. So this is the famous Hagen-Poiseuille's equation. Or law, whatever you call, valid for fully developed flow through a circular pipe. So you can see the very impactful dependence on the diameter of the pipe. So the larger and larger the diameter for a given flow rate, it gets smaller. On the other hand, smaller and smaller the diameter, the head loss becomes tremendous. That means you require huge pumping power to drive the flow. And that is one of the great challenges in microchannel flow if you want to just use a traditional pumping to drive the flow. So if D goes down from say 1 centimeter to 1 micron, so 1 centimeter is 10 to the power 2, sorry, 10 to the power minus 1 10 to the power minus 2 meter, and 1 meter is or 1 micron is equal to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. So in that way, when you come down from centimeter to micron, you are coming all the way 10 to the power minus 8 orders down. Even if it is meter, you are coming down from meter to sorry, I just sort of so if you come down from centimeter, this is already 10 to the power minus 2 meter. So if you say 1 centimeter divided by 1 micron, so it will be 10 to the power minus 4, not 10 to the power minus 8. I'm sorry about that. Sorry, 10 to the power plus 4. So that means what happens is that if you come down to a dimension of the order of micron, you are coming down, say from centimeter to micron. So you are coming down 10 to the power 4 to the power 4 orders. So 10 to the power 16 times the head loss will increase for a particular flow rate. That means it's a tremendous pumping power that is required to drive the flow. And that is why alternative mechanisms of driving the flow are so important in microchannel transport. I will get into another example with this use of cylindrical coordinate system. You call it an example or a problem or whatever. So this problem is also having a circular geometry, but something which is physically different from this flow through a circular pipe. So you have two concentric cylinders. Let us draw the center lines. So these are concentric cylinders. The side views are just circles. The inner cylinder is having radius R1. The outer cylinder is radius R2, and in between you have some fluid with viscosity mu. And the cylinders are respectively rotating with angular velocities omega 1 and omega 2. Okay, so these are concentric rotating cylinders. Rotating is very important with uniform angular velocity. So this type of flow is called as Taylor-Couette flow. So we have earlier discussed about Couette flow, that is between two parallel plates, and here it is between two rotating cylinders. the geometry is different and the implications are also different. The implications will have some similarity when the gap between the two cylinders is very, very small. Then the curvature effect will not come, the geometry effect will not come, and Taylor-Couette flow and Couette flow will have similar quantitative representation. But if the gap is not that small and curvature effect is important, then it is better to address it in a more rigorous way rather than simplifying these two surfaces as two parallel plates. And that is what we are going to do here. Now again, what is the motivation of studying this problem? One motivation we have earlier told that imagine a bearing and a shaft. So you could imagine the inner cylinder to be the shaft and outer cylinder to be the bearing with omega 2 equal to 0. That is the example that we have talked about earlier. The other application is that we will see that in this way, if you know what is the power required, say the outer cylinder is stationary and inner cylinder is rotated. If we know what is the power required to make it rotate with this angular velocity, then from that we can actually find out the viscosity of an unknown fluid. So if we know what is the power required to have this relative motion, that will be a function of omega 1, R1 and R2. Let us say if omega 2 equal to 0 and mu. So from that expression, if mu is not known, mu can be found out. So this is a way of measuring viscosity of unknown fluids, and that experimental setup which does it is known as rotating cylinder viscometer. So by name viscometer, you can understand that it's like a viscosity measuring apparatus based on this fundamental principle that we are talking about. So you can understand that this is one of the extremely important fundamentally critical problems in fluid mechanics. So now the difference between this and the pipe flow problem is not just the annular flow, but also that because of rotating the cylinder, now V theta will come into the picture. Earlier V theta was not there in the circular pipe, only Vz was there. Now V theta will come. So we'll start with, so we'll make these assumptions, very clear assumptions, that we will consider this. First of all, we'll consider a long cylinder. We will discuss what are the implications of this. Both are long, they are concentric, the flow is steady and density is constant. Or you can simplify in a general way, incompressible. So we'll start with the considerations of incompressible flow. So this will lead to divergence of V equal to 0. So it is just like the the general way of describing the pipe flow problem, which I tried to do, rather than being restrictive from the very beginning, so that you understand the general description of the pipe flow, which we can use here also for the mathematical part. So this will be so the 1 by R, this one R VR plus 1 by R. So very similar to the pipe flow problem that we wrote, the continuity equation, plus this equal to 0. So now we will use some of the very important keywords of the problem. Many times there are certain keywords given in the problem which for problem solving many times we consider those as a beautification of the statement of the problem. So long cylinder. So if we are not careful enough, we will say long, short, what? I mean, what is the impact? So if it's a long cylinder, the axial extent is so large as compared to, so long or short, which one will you call short and which one will you call long? Is it 1 meter, 1 kilometer, 1 millimeter, 1 micron, what? So this long and short, it is reflective of this one, R2 minus R1. This is the length scale in the radial direction divided by the length scale in the axial direction. This is small, this ratio. So that means it's a long cylinder. Doesn't matter what is absolute value of L and R2 minus R1. This ratio is good enough. Small means say less than 0.1, one order at least smaller. We can consider a small. So if that be the case, see the axial derivative will depend on some delta Vz divided by L in terms of order of magnitude. If L is large as compared to other dimensions, that means we can neglect this. So this is not exactly equal to 0, but the long cylinder approximation is setting this derivative to be 0. Okay. V theta is not equal to 0, but this term is 0. Why? This term is 0 because V theta is not a function of theta. Not that it is 0, but it's not a function of theta. Why it is not a function of theta? There is no theta asymmetry. That means the angular velocities omega1 and omega2, they are not varying with angular position. They are same throughout the angular position. That means there is symmetry with respect to the angular coordinate theta. And therefore, this is equal to 0. So if that be the case, then we are left with this equal to 0. And that means RVR equal to is not a function of. So we now know from no penetration boundary condition, you have VR is equal to 0 at both R1 and R2, right? So this is a solid thing. So this is the fluid domain is the between the annular space between the cylinders. So at both R1 and R2, that is the surfaces of the inner and outer cylinder, because of no penetration, the velocity is 0. And that means that R into VR is 0 for all R. And that means to generalize it, you must have VR equal to 0. So that is the conclusion. See, the conclusion is the same, but the logic is different from fully developed flow logic. Fully developed flow, this was identical equal to 0. Here, this is approximately 0 for a long cylinder approximation. Now we will move on to the other momentum equations, X and all the important components of the momentum equation, that is R, theta, and Z. So we'll start with say R momentum. So we have rho, this one. So I'm just writing this terms, exactly what we wrote for the pipe flow. Equation doesn't change, only simplification will change. So if we now simplify, first of all, steady flow will make it 0. VR is equal to 0, that we have just found out. There is no, so VR is 0 means anyway, I mean, it is 0. Now V theta is not 0. So we cannot really ignore, set this term to 0. Let it will be there. VR is 0 means, this will be 0. And VR 0 means this will be 0. So this will be 0. This will be 0. We started with R momentum because we already know VR equal to 0. So the simplification will be very, very easy. So that is why we started with R momentum. And this term theta dependence not there. So this is 0. So from here, we get this pressure gradient along the R direction is equal to this rho into V theta square by R. This is something where if you have a curvature in the streamlines, you will have a V theta component, and this will give a radial pressure gradient across the streamlines. We have earlier discussed about it in the context of this acceleration in the case of say curved streamlines, and you can see that exactly the same thing is back. And a very, very interesting thing. See, this is what will give you a level of intellectual superiority over others in understanding fluid mechanics. See, anybody can derive this, but the most interesting insight is that this does not depend on whether viscous or inviscid flow. And this should first strike your mind, because we at some point of time encountered this in the context of dynamics of inviscid flows, when we are talking about the Euler equation in different stream-wise and cross-stream-wise coordinate systems. So why it is so? It is quite clear that all the viscous terms, see this is the viscous term, and all the viscous terms are identically 0. That means despite the fluid having viscosity, it is not giving rise to any viscous stress in the radial momentum transport consideration. So this shows that an inviscid flow need not necessarily talk about a flow with identically viscosity equal to 0. It may have absolutely nothing to do with viscosity equal to 0 or not. In reality, except for some very special superfluids, there is no fluid which has viscosity 0. But here, if you recall that the viscous stress is the viscosity times the rate of deformation. So the rate of deformation, which is given by these kinematic terms, they will all become 0 so far as this radial momentum transport is concerned. So that means effectively for radial momentum transport, it is like inviscid flow. For other momentum transports, it may not be. And let us see what is the situation for the other momentum transport, that is Z and theta. So the most interesting velocity component will be theta, because the angular motion is giving rise to V theta. So it is like V theta is triggered by the motion of the cylinders. So V theta will be the most interesting, but we will next study Vz, because it will give some more simplification. So Z momentum, before we finally arrive at the theta momentum. Okay, so this equation we'll be able to simplify quite in a very straightforward manner. So to simplify it in a very straightforward manner, first of all, steady flow, then VR equal to 0. Then what? There is no theta dependence, so this is 0, and there is no Z dependence because of the long cylinder approximation. Okay, so that is the left hand side. Right hand side, Vz itself is much less as compared to V theta and VR. The reason is that the length scales which are governing V theta and VR and the boundary conditions, they are directly triggering the motion in the R theta plane. But in the Z direction, there is no physical influence which is triggering the motion. Not that fluid is actually supplied. So only I mean it is being churned, so to say, in the R theta plane with no mechanism, no physical effect that is giving rise to any axial motion. So even if there is a little bit of axial motion, I mean it is much less than what is the dominant, the dominant physics is V theta VR. So in that way, I mean all these, because Vz itself is very small. So from here we can simply conclude that the pressure gradient along Z is 0. So you have two equations, one for pressure gradient along Z, which is simply 0, and pressure gradient along R is this. So we can actually calculate the pressure distribution along R if we know what is V theta. But for that we have to refer to the theta momentum equation, and that we will do next. So let me just clean up this space, except for the final equations that we will keep, other ones we will clean up. And here we will write this. Sorry. Here we will write this one, the theta momentum. So theta momentum, let us write rho unsteady term. So in the pipe flow standard problem, theta momentum was something which was irrelevant. But in this problem, theta momentum is a very relevant thing, just because of the boundary condition that the cylinders are rotated. So I'm just writing all the terms in the R theta Z coordinate system. So we will now simplify. I have just written the equation. Maybe we'll just clean up a bit more space, and then we will do the simplification. So this is the unsteady term equal to 0. Then VR equal to 0. Then there is no theta dependence. Because VR equal to 0, this term will become 0. And also Vz equal to 0. So left hand side has become 0 because of theta symmetry. This term is 0. Theta symmetry will make this 0. For long, okay, theta cylinder will make this 0, and this will be 0 because of the long cylinder. Approximately 0, not equal to 0. So any derivative along the axial direction is small, the second derivative is also small. So we are left with only one term, this one. And that will lead to basically mu is not equal to 0. So this is equal to 0. So now when this is equal to 0, we have to keep in mind that v theta is a function of what? V theta is, it could be a function of r theta and z. Out of that, it is not a function of z because of the long cylinder. It is not a function of theta because of the theta symmetry. And therefore, v theta is a function of r only. And in this equation, accordingly, we can replace this with the ordinary derivative. Now, I mean, you can just integrate it. This is C1. And so d of r v theta is equal to C1 r dr. Now, if you integrate it once more, so r v theta is equal to C1 r square by 2 plus C2. That means you can just write an expression for v theta is C1 r by 2 plus C2 by r. Okay. So just to simplify the style of writing, I mean, instead of this C1 by 2 and all, I mean, by 2, C1 by 2 is just another constant. So the generic form that comes out of the solution is A into R plus B by R. So one component directly proportional to R, another component inversely proportional to R. Right. Now recall, see, this is how you can connect between various topics that are being covered in some course or related courses. So recall something which we have covered earlier, vortex flow. So we had this in the context of kinematics we discussed. That is why you see kinematics is such an important backbone of understanding fluid flow, that you can refer to that for explaining most of the flow physics. So vortex flow is a flow where v theta is a function of r and other components are not there. V r equal to 0 and vz equal to 0. So this is clearly a vortex flow. And here the physics of the vortex flow is because of rotation of, inducing rotationality or vortex in the flow by rotating the cylinders. So in that way, vortex is related to rotation, and here rotation is created in the flow. In that sense, it resembles or it agrees with the intuitive physics or intuitive perception about vortex. Now, more quantitatively, you have a component which is proportional to r. So you can imagine it is like v theta equal to omega r. So it's just like v equal to omega r. This is forced vortex. And v theta is inversely proportional to r. This is called as free vortex. This we all discussed. So these vortex flows we discussed without bringing into the picture whether it is viscous flow or not. It didn't have anything to do with viscosity. It was just simple kinematic definition. Now we see that in a viscous flow, due to such imposed rotation between two concentric cylinders, you could get a vortex flow which is just a linear combination of free vortex and forced vortex. So this is something very, very interesting, and A and B are very straightforward to get. So how to get A and B? You know that at small r is equal to r1, that is the inner cylinder. What is v theta? V theta is omega r1. This is the no slip. That means zero relative tangential velocity between the fluid and the solid. Solid has tangential velocity equal to omega r at its surface. So fluid at that location will also have the same velocity, so that there is no relative slip. So this is also no slip. So obviously you can evaluate A and B from these two by substituting here. That is very straightforward, but let us consider one or two special cases. The first special case talks about, or maybe one special case we will consider. The first special case talks about a single cylinder, one cylinder rotating in an infinite outer fluid. That means instead of two concentric cylinders, you have one cylinder just rotating. One cylinder of radius r rotating, and outer there is no cylinder. I mean, it's just infinite fluid. So the solution of the problem that we have put up, that can be used for this special case also if you are a bit clever in setting up the values of omega 1 and omega 2. So here a special case is you have this at r or small r equal to capital R, you have v theta is equal to omega r, and if because you have no other outside cylinder, you may imagine that there could be another concentric outer cylinder, but only at infinity with angular velocity equal to 0. That means you have v theta equal to 0. Right? This is equivalent to omega 2 equal to 0. So in a way, an outer cylinder located far away from the inner one with no rotation is actually a special case of what we have considered here. But this one, if you substitute here, so at r tends to infinity, you have this term will anyway be 0. It will not create any problem, but it will create a problem if at r tends to infinity you want to set v theta equal to 0. The only possibility is that A is absolutely directly 0. So if A is 0, then in this case you have this v theta is equal to b by r. So this is a very interesting way of experimentally generating free vortex. So you have a cylinder in a large extent of fluid and rotate the cylinder with some, say, motor with a uniform angular velocity. Okay. So once you rotate it with that, you will get the flow field outside, in this region generated just like this free vortex. Now, what is the viscous stress here? The viscous stress is very important in this special case. So we are continuing with the special case problem. That is this V theta is equal to B by R. So how do you find out V is very straightforward. Let us do that one step just for clarity. So at small r is equal to capital R, V theta is equal to omega R. So that means omega R is equal to V by capital R. So V is equal to omega R square. So V theta will be simply omega R square by small r. Okay. So now we will find out what is the shear stress. So this is tau r theta, the tangential stress. Instead of the tau xy, this is now tau r theta. I will write this expression in the cylindrical polar coordinate system. Okay. So just the cylindrical polar coordinate system. So let us substitute that. Well, VR is 0, so it doesn't do anything here. V theta we substitute as V by R. So this will become mu R ddr of V by R square. So that is nothing but mu R minus 2B by R cube. So minus 2 mu in place of B, it is, let me just clean up a little bit. Minus 2 mu in place of B, it is omega R square by R, so R to the power 4. Okay. So clearly, for finite R, until and unless R tends to infinity, you have tau r theta is not equal to 0. Only if it is tending to infinity, it is 0. So this is shear stress. Now, very interestingly, let us calculate what is the shear force. You might think that they are quite synonymous. We'll calculate what is the shear force. So how to calculate the force? We'll simply use the Navier-Stokes equation in vector form. So this is something which we derived in the class, but I'm just writing again. There is no body force here. So this is the Navier-Stokes equation in vector form. Again, the impact of this form is that it doesn't depend on the coordinate system. So you can clearly see here that which term represents viscous force. So this is viscous force per unit volume. So Navier-Stokes equation, we know right hand side is force per unit volume. Now we will use an identity which is commonly used in vector calculus. So vector identity. So this is just a vector identity. This doesn't understand fluid mechanics. We have referred to this identity possibly at some point of time. If not, we will use it very extensively to understand some aspects of turbulent flow later on. But for this purpose, see, this is an identity. This has nothing to do with whether v is velocity or any other vector. This is just a mathematical identity. But see the beautiful physics it carries. So this is the physics of mathematics. See, this is 0 for incompressible flow, right? And this is 0 for irrotational flow. Irrotational flow means there is no vorticity or rotation. So see, this is v theta is proportional to 1 by r. This is free vortex. And this is irrotational flow. We have discussed it earlier in the context of kinematics. So this is irrotational flow. So clearly this is 0. That means you can clearly infer from this identity that for incompressible and irrotational flow, both are true here, you must have this equal to 0. So this is 0. So that means our conclusion is that the shear force is 0 because the shear force is coming from viscous effect. So it is a very peculiar situation where the local shear stress is not 0, right? The local shear stress, this is not 0 except r tends to infinity, but the shear force at any location is 0, I mean over any element, because per unit volume it is 0. So I'm putting up a question to you, and this is a very interesting question. You think very, very deeply to explain it physically. It's not so easy to explain it. So this is where in-depth understanding of fluid mechanics comes. I'm again repeating, it is not by just integration, differentiation, vector calculus, etc. So you have shear force equal to 0, but shear stress locally not equal to 0. So one obvious way of thinking is that locally it is not 0, but if you integrate it over a surface, it will be 0. But how it is happening? You may try to look into it a bit more specifically with more details. But the outcome is very clear here that fluid mechanics is so interesting is because there could be things which are very non-intuitive. This is such an example where you have shear force equal to 0, but local shear stress not equal to 0. So with this, we will draw a closure to the steady flow problems in the context of Navier-Stokes equation that we have discussed. In the context of Navier-Stokes equation, we will discuss two unsteady flow problems known as Stokes first problem and Stokes second problem. That we will take up in the next class. I have a meeting from 11:30, so I will not continue further today, and maybe we will wind up. So we will have the next class on the coming Monday, that is next week Monday, where we will continue with the exact solution of Navier-Stokes equation, but for unsteady flows, which was not covered in any of your undergraduate courses. So that we will do for two classical problems which are there in your syllabus: Stokes first problem and Stokes second problem. After that, we will have two very important chapters: turbulent flow and boundary layer theory. And then, depending upon the time available, we can explore more topics. So that is what would be the agenda for the remaining part of this course. So we will wind up here, and thank you very much for being in the class, and wish you a very happy Diwali. Enjoy the time. This is otherwise a very difficult time, but I mean, it is also a festival of light. So hopefully things will be brighter and very prosperous for all of you. I appreciate the challenges that many of you are facing in terms of your profession, profession in a sense, your academic career. You are confined at maybe home and not able to explore many things. In a way, it's a challenge for many of your family members also. Maybe some of them have suffered health issues and so on. But hopefully all will be better. All the best. Have a good time, and we will catch up early in the next week on the coming Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.